The name of the YouTube video is literally Hitler. Why can't we talk about him? And I'm not kidding. That is the name that's the name it's literally the name of the episode. It's her 17th episode. She's talking about Hitler. Anyway, here we go. Here we go, folks. Why can't we talk about him? Because you know what? I've gone through my life. I've had advanced placement American history classes. We learned about Hitler. We learned about World War II. People talked about him a lot, and I just have to wonder, who does Candace think is trying to stop us from talking about Hitler? I wonder where she might take that one.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Today we're going to keep the subject matter light. We're going to discuss Adolf Hitler. No, but I'm completely being serious. Literally, Hitler is on the agenda because why can't we discuss him ever? We should. Plus, a Newsweek writer.
Should we? Should we be discussing Hitler all the time?
Apparently has a death wish because he's written a piece entitled "Taylor Swift is not a good role model. And if you want to die, that's exactly how you do it. The Swifties are going to come for you." Plus, people...
Okay. But that implies the Swifties are going to murder somebody. And as far as I know, Swifties haven't done that. So...
People are apparently upset with Kyle Rittenhouse. Do you guys remember him from the Kenosha, the BLM, the shooting? He got off. It was amazing. Well, people are upset with him because apparently his mother and his sister have no money, and they started a GoFundMe, and the internet is saying that that is not right because how do you not help out your family? Do you guys agree with that philosophy? All that coming up on Candace.
I think if your mom is about to be homeless and you've made a bunch of money off of killing a guy, maybe you should help your mom out. That's my hot take. You should help your mom. I don't know, it kind of makes him seem like a bad guy, frankly.
Yes.
Can I say how insane it is that she's rebranded as like a daytime television host who spouts Nazi propaganda? Like, that's crazy, right?
So...
Wait 1 second, folks. All right.
You guys already know that I absolutely loved Tucker Carlson Down Under, the way that he was just giving it to the journalists because all of their questions were so predictable. And when they got on the subject of Russia, 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 because how could they resist themselves, Tucker had the best response. Take a listen.
Putin! Putin! I think you did strategically because you knew it's what we'd ask.
Putin! He's so bad!
And I also appreciate that...
Did he make you take the COVID shot?
Putin! That is exactly how a lot of us feel when they...
Is that how a lot of people feel? Because it looks like he was just being really crazy. Like, I don't know, to anyone who's not in your, like, conservative bubble, like, that sounds crazy.
Start hammering this Russia is bad narrative. We're just bored with it. And by the way,
Wait, but Russia is bad. They're doing an invasion of one of our allies. That's pretty bad.
it's not just Putin. I am also so incredibly bored. I am exhausted. I am tired. I need a nap. When people start doing the Nazi and the, of course, literally Hitler comparisons, it's over. It's canceled. Please stop it. Really
Yeah, she's really tired of you guys bringing up Hitler all the time, guys. That's why she's doing an entire episode on Hitler.
started drumming up in 2015 when Trump was running. Literally Hitler, literally MAGA. They're just like Nazis. It's always literally, right? It's never figuratively. They're like, no, literally Donald J. Trump is Hitler. And of course, I've gone through it. Any person really that has a platform has gone through this. But I will never forget this. Now that I'm on the other side of it and so many years have passed, the first time that I ever almost got canceled, it was because I was discussing Adolf Hitler in an academic sense. Actually, the subject was
Oh gosh. All right. Sure. Yeah, let's see about that, Candace. Here we go. Where's the clip? Here we go.
Yeah, I agree. I actually don't have any problems at all with the word nationalism. I think that it gets the definition gets poisoned by elitists that actually want globalism. Globalism is what I don't want. So when you think about whenever we say nationalism, the first thing people think about, at least in America, is Hitler. You know, he was a National Socialist. But if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine. The problem is that he had dreams outside of Germany. He wanted.
Yeah, you were discussing Hitler in an academic sense.
To globalize. He wanted everybody to be German, everybody to be speaking German, everybody to look a different way. That's not, to me, that's not nationalism. In thinking about.
But, you know, within your own borders, yeah, you can have everyone act the same way along ethnic lines. Sure.
How it could go bad down the line. I don't.
This is just like the rhetoric of like a white nationalist, man.
Really have an issue with nationalism. I really don't. I think that it's okay. It's important to retain your country's identity and to make sure that what's happening here, which I think is incredibly worrisome in terms of the decrease in the birth rate that we're seeing in the UK, is what you kind of want to avoid. So I don't have anything problem. I have no problems with nationalism. It's globalism that I try to avoid.
Anyway, bookmark that for future use.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyway, yeah, you were discussing this in an academic sense.
It wasn't even about Adolf Hitler. It was a question that was being asked of me. You remember this?
Yeah, that's true. The question wasn't about Hitler. You were the one who brought up Hitler. you brought him up.
Clip notoriously. They were asking about the word nationalism and why people are afraid of embracing the word nationalism. And I said that it was wrongly attributed to Adolf Hitler. And then BuzzFeed took me out of context. They made it seem as though I was saying Hitler was a good guy, which of course.
No, you objectively said while a camera was rolling that Hitler's ambitions would have been fine if they had all been centered within the borders of Germany. Like you would have been fine with like the Holocaust if it had just been in Germany itself. Like that's crazy.
I wasn't. That's always a hoax when somebody is pretending that someone jumped up and said that. But it didn't matter. People were incensed. They were demanding my cancellation. I had Jewish groups demanding my cancellation and saying, how dare I? And I even got blacklisted temporarily from Fox News until Stuart Varney was the first one who had me on his show. And we talked about the scandal. And he gave me a piece of advice. He said, you should just never talk about Adolf Hitler. And at the time, I was so appreciative. I was like, thank you for allowing me to not have my entire platform canceled. But I reflect on that and I'm like, what an absolute nonsense that is. And I'm not saying this about Stuart Varney, but just that general idea. And that is an idea that permeates is that we are not allowed to discuss Adolf Hitler.
No, you're allowed to discuss Adolf Hitler. The thing is that most people, unless they're Nazis, aren't really gonna like you talking about Adolf Hitler, in glowing terms. Like, oh yeah, he just wanted to do what was best for the German people. Yeah, he was just, he was doing what was best for the people of Germany. And clearly what was best for them was killing all of the people with disabilities, the gays, and the Jews, and the Romani, and categorizing people into various racial castes based on their bloodline. The ones that were allowed to remain inside society. So yeah, maybe some people have a problem with those things. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. I'm just a humble country streamer.
Why? That is crazy, especially because he is the focus of all of our youth indoctrination, right? We have a visceral response when we hear his name. That's why I did the sound effect, dun, 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 because they've turned him almost into Lord Voldemort.
He's worse than Lord Voldemort because he oversaw death camps that killed millions upon millions of people. Like, yeah, he's a pretty bad guy.
I don't know if you're a Harry Potter fan. I definitely was and am one.
Wait, you're a fan of Harry Potter? Isn't that satanic? Like, it's a book with like wizards and magic, and your most recent video is in fact about how NASA is satanic. I really wanted to watch this one too, but I don't think I have gas for 2 Candace Owens segments. Maybe we'll get to this one soon.
And this whole concept of a dark lord who should not be named. Adolf Hitler is he who should not be named. And what's really interesting is that
he's not. You can say Hitler. That's fine. It's just that most people are going to be incredibly pissed off if you're like, yeah, that Hitler guy got some things right. Yeah, it turns out people aren't a huge fan of Nazis.
when you even discuss, you would assume, since that's the entire focus, the nucleus of our idea of who a bad person is, step aside Satan because we've got Adolf Hitler. When you assume that people, therefore, must know a lot about World War II, you then find out that actually Americans know nothing about World War II. My husband was amazed by this, by the way, obviously, because I'm in this sort of cross-national relationship. My husband was like, why do Americans always use Adolf Hitler as if, he was the number one mass murderer of the 20th century? He wasn't. What is this extreme focus on Nazis and Adolf Hitler as the only comparison we can ever make? And like I said, it's because we have been indoctrinated and we actually know nothing about the person other than the fact that we must fear him. And if you really
why are you saying we don't know anything about Hitler? What? Yeah, a guy who waged a world war. He was fighting for global domination, to build a global empire predicated on like an imagined mythos of like racial superiority and eugenics. Like, yeah, he was literally Hitler. He was bad.
really, really want to insult someone, say, you are literally Hitler. Literally. And so, yeah, imagine my surprise. I know I've showed you this on the show before, but when I actually then started learning real history and I got out of the bubble of the American education system and I started recognizing these Soviet tactics of introducing really heavy concepts to kids while their brains are developing because you want to traumatize them. And you're traumatizing them because you want them to comply. And what you want them to comply with in this case is Germany, Nazi, Hitler, the greatest evil that's ever happened on earth, even though factually and statistically, it is not.
Gotta love how she's just going out there playing defense for the Third Reich, Yeah, she's like give her like another week, OS Crane, she'll be talking about the Bolshevik tactics. Or Jewish tactics, give her a little bit of time. she understands her religion, but she doesn't. No, she doesn't. I think she's completely crazy. I genuinely believe that. She's gone, baby.
And part of that learning process for me when I started looking into it was coming
Oh, true. She'll say Zionist tactics because she is one of those. She does co-opt the genocide in Gaza for her own ends.
across a huge fact that we the Allies, ethnically cleansed 12 million Germans. Because when you say to people, okay, what is it about Hitler? Why is he the most
can
evil?
try
Well, the
that,
first thing
Blair.
people would say is, well, an ethnic cleansing almost took place. And now I offer back, you mean like we actually did to the Germans? Here's a clip again from that documentary I keep telling you that you have to watch. It premiered on BBC.
What?
And it is entitled The Savage Peace. I'm going to give you a clip here of a Czechoslovakian civilian who watched what was done to his German-speaking neighbors immediately following the end of the war. Take a listen. They were the same. You're probably thinking, but Candace, literally Hitler. He had the camps. That's what made it different. It was the camps.
After the Second World War, most of the German-speaking population, mostly Roman Catholic, relatively few Protestants, were expelled from Czechoslovakia to Germany and Austria. So, yeah, a lot of populations were moved around following World War II, largely because Germany's empire had to be dismantled. People had citizenship in different areas. And there was political moving of borders. That happened. People got displaced. Was it good? No. Was it preferable to a longer World War II? Yes. Yeah. Also, again, you have to consider that Czechoslovakia had been occupied. These are all they'd been occupied. They didn't want people that reminded them of their occupiers. Was it good of them to do an ethnic cleansing? No, it was not. Can you understand where that impulse came from? I think so. Following one of the largest conflicts in modern history. Yeah, 12 million Germans. The film evidence she showed 2,000. Well, same number, guys. Okay, you just have to add a couple zeros and a 1. It's basically the same number.
Imagine camps being used to kill people. Oh, you mean the exact same camps that we then transferred the Germans into so that we could, mass kill them? Yeah, I bet you've never heard
Citation needed.
the name Solomon Morel before, and you should know about him because Solomon Morel is an interesting character. He had some Soviet training, and then one day he just stood up on top of a table and said to these innocent German-speaking civilians, "I'm going to torture you because I don't know where my parents are," and they were put into camps. And then he began to torture these individuals who were completely guilty of nothing. They were innocent. Here's another clip from that documentary. Take a listen. All under the direction of Solomon Morel. He was a particularly sadistic individual. Now you might be thinking,
Yeah, I mean, he was a particularly sadistic individual, for sure. Largely to do with the fact that he lived under Nazi occupation until the end of the war and fought with the Soviet partisans. Was he a saint? No, not at all. You are confusing people. He was not a Nazi. Also, just as an FYI, he was accused of war crimes and crimes against humanity, so it's not like people didn't talk about him. Like, he remained a controversial figure after, like, his stint in, like, under Soviet rule, okay, in the Soviet armed forces. He remained a controversial figure and was accused of these crimes in the 90s, so, like... Yeah, in 1996, he was indicted by Poland on charges of torture, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and communist crimes. So, I don't know. Oh man, people don't talk about it. They literally do. They were going to prosecute him.
Sure, something must have happened to him. He must have faced some consequences, and you'd be right. He did. In 1996, and this is according to his Wikipedia page, Solomon Morel was formally indicted of genocide by the Polish Public Prosecutor's Office. The indictment was later amended.
That's not in his... That is not in his Wikipedia. I'm sorry. I just read to you what he was indicted for. He was investigated for war crimes and crimes against humanity, including revenge killings. But interestingly here, not named genocide. Interesting.
Did to include war crimes, crimes against humanity, and communist crimes because he was a commie. The latter charge was added in 2004 and constitutes a specific crime under Polish criminal law. So in 1998, Poland requested that he be extradited for the trial, but Israel refused. Yeah, that's where he was hiding out in Israel. And so Israel sent a reply to the Polish Justice Ministry from the Israeli government that said that they would not extradite him because the statute of limitations had expired on war crimes. So you can put, Germans into a pyramid, innocent civilians. You can watch them suffer. You can murder them in mass. And I don't know, I guess statute of limitations can...
Oh, no, she's absolutely a Nazbol. Yeah, 100%.
Expire. That's all I'm going to say on that because Israel is, of course, our greatest ally, the most moral everything in the world. Do you know who else agreed with those Czechoslovakian civilians that the things that were done to the Germans were utterly horrific? General George Patton Jr., you're probably familiar with his name because he was a very decorated U.S. general in World War II who led the Third Army, both in France and in Germany. Well, post-war, they appointed him as the military governor in Bavaria, and he led denazification efforts because that's what we're doing. We're trying to denazify the territory. That's a great effort.
It sounds like you're not really a huge fan of denazifying efforts, Candace. That's so interesting.
But then they say that as he was leading this, he became, quote unquote, increasingly erratic. PBS states that in April of 1945, he was removed by Eisenhower from his leadership of the Third Army for making inflammatory remarks concerning the denazification policies. What were those policies? He said, quote, "We may have been fighting the wrong enemy all along, but while we're here, we should go after the bastards now because we're going to have to fight them eventually." He's referring to the Soviets that trained that person that I just showed you, who were utterly sadistic and mass murdering Germans.
Yeah, the Soviets were not good. Turns out, very bad. Stalin bad. Yeah. Crazy. It's almost like there's a whole Cold War about it or something.
For no reason other than the fact that they were speaking German. They hadn't even voted for Adolf Hitler, had nothing to do with anything, but they had to die. So yeah, if that's what your concern is, if you're worried about camps, we did that. If you're worried about ethnic cleansing, we did that. Don't even get me started on the camps that we forced our own American citizens into following Pearl Harbor. Yep, that's a thing as well. Of course, you remember that. Japanese, some people weren't even Japanese. They were just Japanese looking. And we went ahead and we put them in camps after Pearl Harbor, and we made them stay there until the end of war. So don't let that be something that you think we're not capable of. But then you move on to the experimentation. Yes, of course, that's been embedded into our minds. The Nazis experimented on innocent people. Candace, come on, that's the difference. They experimented on twins. I mean, some of the stories, by the way, sound completely absurd. I'm like, the idea that they just cut a human up and then sewed them back together. Why would you do that? Literally, even if you're the most evil person in the world.
Also, can everything I'm looking up here is not really backing up most of what she's saying. Just throwing it out there, like these camps were bad under the Soviets. They weren't concentration camps being run for the express purpose of killing, ethnic Germans. That wasn't what they were doing. Were the conditions bad? Did people die? Yes, absolutely. Were they death camps to the extent of like the concentration camps under Nazi Germany? No.
World, that's a tremendous waste of time and supplies. Just slice a person in half and sew them together. That just sounds like bizarre propaganda, but let's just go with it. Let's say that that's actually true. Okay, that experimentation is the thing that sets the Nazis apart. Well, why did we bring them all over here thereafter? What was Operation Paperclip? We took all of those top Nazi scientists and we brought them to America. I wonder why we did that. Maybe for a little more experimentation. Have you heard of Dr. Sidney Gottlieb? Have you?
Why did we bring them here, with those people with their brains for their ideas and such? Why would we do that? Think about it. Think about it.
Ever heard of the CIA? If you think experimentation is unique to the Nazis, you need to wake up.
Yeah, experimentation is science. You don't have science without experimentation.
Oh, but Candace, the Nazis murdered people with special needs. You heard of Planned Parenthood? They literally tell you to abort your children if they have special needs. You learn that in the school system. And in terms of
They don't do that. They don't tell you to kill your child if they're gonna need like special services. They don't tell you to do that. That's just a lie.
experimentation, I invite you again as required readings. This book, Chaos, man. They're talking about this specific operation that took place under the directive of LBJ, who was also a monster, a monstrous president that we had. And this operation was called Phoenix. And I'm just going to read you just a couple of sentences here. Their attempts were sometimes even more unhinged. In 1968, CIA scientists at the Bien Hoa prison outside Saigon surgically opened the skulls of 3 prisoners, implanted electrodes on their brains, gave them daggers, and left them alone in a room. They wanted to shock the prisoners into killing one another. But when the efforts failed, the prisoners were shot and their bodies were burned. Yeah, it's an operation where we just were mass killing civilians, which we do a lot. But there, of course, if we do it, it's different. It's different because we're not literally Hitler. We drop bombs, entire.
Yeah, America's not good. That's true.
Populations. We firebomb Christians. We drop a
I think though we need to make a distinction that also Hitler was uniquely bad.
nuke on praying Catholics. And if you know about it, you get screamed at by the propagandists in the West. Knowing about it is the crime. The crime is not actually dropping a bomb on.
Yes, exactly, Daniel A. This entire video is whataboutism in an effort to downplay Nazi genocide and war crimes. Yeah. It is. This is an hour-long whataboutism specifically to make Nazism more palatable to her viewers.
Praying civilians in Nagasaki. That's not the crime. The crime is not firebombing people through Ash Wednesday in Dresden who were civilians, children. No, that's not the crime. The crime is you knowing.
Dresden.
It's me knowing. That's the real problem. And I got to stop knowing these things. I got to stop knowing about Pol Pot. I got to stop knowing about the Cambodian genocide and knowing that, of course, there were people that did worse things throughout history, especially as a Christian. I have.
Why? No one's saying you can't know those things. No one says those things didn't happen. Except people who are very, ideologically motivated, I guess.
Got to stop talking about Henryk Yagoda. They get real upset when you talk about the Bolsheviks. You want to know why? Because of.
Who's they? Who's they who's getting upset? Like, I'm upset about you playing defense for Nazis? when you don't give a shit about any of these other scenarios around the world either. Like, you're just cynically using them frankly, to put forward the cause of Nazism. Like, that's what you're doing here.
Bolsheviks were never brought to heel. The
Hey,
Bolsheviks
black in the
never
board.
had to face trials. There were no Nuremberg trials for the Bolsheviks. In fact, many of them came to America, and many of them are in positions of power right now. And that's why they get real angry when you start looking into history, when you start recognizing that they are intentionally telling Christians to shut up about the Christians that have been killed all across the world. They get very uncomfortable when you know stuff that they did not put into your book when you were in middle school to traumatize you into compliance of believing that the only bad people ever, there's only two of them, by the way, Putin and Adolf Hitler. So to those people, I'm just going to say, spare me, because I'm not going to stop talking about real history. I'm going to educate people that follow me about real history, because it's the only way that we're going to prevent these psychopaths from doing more psychopathic things.
Yeah, she's talking about the Jews, guys. Like, she's dog whistling as hard as she can about the Jews. She's echo posting with her voice.
In the future. If you're looking for people that behave like literally Hitler, it ain't me, buddy. You got to start
No, you're just acting like figurative Hitler. We get it. You know?
examining your own government. That's all I'm going to say on that topic. You know the reality that's surrounding us right now. A lot of us are struggling to keep up with everyday bills, food, gas, the power bill. If you own a home, I want you to call my friends at American Financing today. Interest rate.
I wonder how American Financing feels about an ad for their product and services being included in the middle of a video pushing Nazi power.